Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the anatomy of a disaster. We're going to literally pull apart the complex machinery of the 2008 financial crisis to see exactly how it was built and why it failed so catastrophically. Let's unravel the subprime illusion, how Wall Street burned Main Street.
We have to start right at the breaking point. Picture this. It's September 2008. Imagine waking up to find that a prestigious 158-year-old investment bank, an absolute titan that had survived world wars and the Great Depression, had just completely collapsed overnight. And with that collapse, $600 billion is instantly erased from existence. Poof, gone. Entire retirement accounts vaporized into thin air, and the shockwaves began to ripple outward immediately. But disasters of this absolute magnitude don't just happen by accident.
So we really have to ask ourselves, how did we get to a $600 billion crater? What if the real cause started with a promise so simple, so undeniably appealing, that it could fit perfectly on a suburban billboard? Why rent when you can own? It's the ultimate American dream, right? But as you'll see, this seemingly innocent and highly motivating slogan actually became the fuel for a massive, catastrophic economic illusion.
Which brings us to our first section, cheap money and ninja loans.
Back in the early 2000s, an influx of incredibly cheap money essentially threw historical lending standards right out the window. Just look at the stark absurdity of this situation. You've got a part-time worker earning $40,000 a year, and they are instantly being approved for a $500,000 mortgage. The math was entirely, completely decoupled from reality. This whole era was defined by the infamous ninja loan. And no, that's not as cool as it sounds. These were no income, no job, no asset mortgages. Rather than being some weird niche product, they became the foundational fuel for an industry-wide gold rush. We created a system where simply verifying someone's ability to pay was viewed as an obstacle to profit. Anyone with a pulse could get a mortgage.
Okay, let's dive into this next piece, Wall Street's financial alchemy.
So, what do you do to hide the rot of all these unverified mortgages? Well, Wall Street engineered a three-step conveyor belt. Step 1, they bundled thousands of these toxic subprime loans together. Step 2, they paid credit agencies to stamp that bundle with a pristine AAA rating. And Step 3, they sold them globally as super safe investments. It was literally like paying a food critic to taste spoiled, raw chicken and publicly declare it a Michelin-starred meal.
Now you might be wondering what they called these bundles. They were known as mortgage-backed securities. But in reality, they were financial, radioactive waste masquerading as gold. Because of that highly deceptive AAA label, global investors, everyone from foreign governments to your standard conservative pension funds, rapidly loaded their balance sheets with extreme risk. They were completely unaware of the underlying toxicity.
But there are always a few skeptics. A handful of cynical, outcast investors actually bothered to read the fine print, and they saw the underlying rot. To bet against this massive bubble, they forced Wall Street to engineer something called credit default swaps. These were effectively asymmetric, multi-million-dollar insurance policies that only paid out if the U.S. housing market collapsed. And Wall Street happily took their premium payments, entirely convinced that the housing market was bulletproof.
Now we move to Section 3, the Jenga Tower collapses.
Let's move to and see how this builds, tracking the timeline of the collapse. By 2007, the breaking point finally hit. Housing prices plateaued, and simultaneously, millions of those adjustable-rate ninja loans began to reset. People's monthly payments suddenly doubled, triggering mass defaults. Without its base, the entire Jenga tower fell, exposing those securities as financial plutonium and triggering the historic collapse of Lehman Brothers.
The global financial system froze solid. Banks completely stopped lending to each other. But listen, this wasn't just some spreadsheet problem in New York. This was Main Street in terrifying freefall. The human cost was absolutely staggering. Because everyday businesses suddenly couldn't access the credit they needed just to make payroll, 8 million jobs were vaporized. 8 million!
And the devastation certainly didn't stop at unemployment. As those adjustable-rate mortgages reset and the broader economy contracted, 4 million families were evicted from their homes. Moving boxes and foreclosure notices became the defining image of American suburbs. This right here was the severe, real-world consequence of Wall Street's financial alchemy.
Which takes us to Section 4, the multi-billion-dollar bailout.
Faced with a total credit freeze and an impossible choice, the government injected hundreds of billions of dollars via TARP back into the megabanks. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast of the aftermath. On one side, you have privatized profits. The very architects of the crisis received massive safety nets and record executive bonuses. On the other side, socialized losses. Everyday citizens were handed pink slips and foreclosures, while zero major Wall Street CEOs saw the inside of a prison.
That leaves us with our final section, a bitter legacy. Ultimately, the bailout prevented total economic annihilation, but the structural hubris remains.
There's a quote that perfectly sums up the harsh truths learned by a generation. The next crisis never looks like the last one. It always looks harmless, profitable, and inevitable until it isn't. So looking at the markets today, what seemingly harmless, incredibly profitable trend might just be tomorrow's illusion? Think about it.